So emergency stop, obviously, that's when the conveyor must stop because it's plugged, jammed, something's happened, somebody's arm's in it, we gotta stop it.
It's funny that you bring that up because we were just talking about an e-stop, right, Steve?
We were.
It's called an e-stop. Okay.
Yeah, e-stop.
Okay. Short for emergency.
Right.
So where do you put these? I noticed on the one that you built,
It was a pull cord.
yeah.
And that's what we were just talking about, was a pull cord.
Yeah, we were just discussing what's the correct height
To grab it
for a
and
pull cord to be.
pull it.
Oh, yeah.
We think, we're just trying to, or I'm trying to remember, I designed a conveyor that I think the pull cord was too low, and so it had to be modified. So this next one we're doing, I want to make sure it's where it needs to be.
And the reason you do a pull cord is because you can access it all the way down the conveyor. So whether you're at the start or the end or the middle, you can just reach up and grab that cord and pull it, and it's got a spring-loaded switch at one end that trips. And so you can basically, as you're working around the conveyor and something happens or whatever, really anywhere you are around that conveyor, you can just reach up and grab that cord and pull it, and it stops.
So how high should
So I guess, oh, well, we don't know.
We've got an electrician letting us know.
Finding out as we speak here.
We're finding out from the professionals.
Yeah.
There is a code, I think. There is a
There
rule of thumb
probably is.
of a pull cord. So we're just trying to follow that,
But to back up to the beginning, I guess, it's, honestly, I don't know who requires it, but it's probably OSHA. Requires a way to stop a conveyor or any piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And not only stop it, but it's more than that. It kind of removes the power, and it's immediate.
So these are obviously unpowered conveyors.
Yeah.
So,
and really it's a temporary stop. It's an e-stop. It stops it all. But if you're going to work on the conveyor, you need to lock out the power. That's the rule of thumb, basically. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't. The e-stop is for an immediately. Oh, we got food spilling on the floor. Boom, stop. You hit the button, it stops it. But if you got to work on the conveyor, and you'll see in these plants a lot of production people will have a handful of locks hanging from their belt, and they'll go and flip the main power and lock it out, and then they can work on it. So that way no one restarts it, because someone else might come along and reset the e-stop and turn
Fires.
why is this thing off, and and then turn it on while someone's working on it. Anyway, that's
so that's the whole design of that is emergency stop, whatever the reason might be.
Yeah, as opposed to just a normal stop. And so you might ask, well, what's the difference?
That was my next question.
A normal stop, it depends on the equipment, but sometimes it may be advantageous to hit a normal stop button, and then the machine will go through finish a cycle, perhaps. Or even if it's a piece of equipment that's, say, packaging food, if you hit a normal stop, it may keep running until that food clears out of the machine.
Oh, so it's going to finish whatever.
So it's
finish its
doing.
job.
It's not
Yeah,
just
so
going to stop
you'd
immediately.
call it a controlled stop. Whereas an e-stop, an emergency stop, it just stops it immediately, regardless of what the cycle of the machine is or what it's doing. And it's a safety feature in case someone's caught in the machinery or there's stuff getting jammed up or just whatever it may be. It's a way to stop the equipment immediately.
Does that have to tie into the whole plant? Because if you stop this one conveyor, everything else is still running.
yeah.
Well,
That's a
tricky. That's a topic all unto itself.
Yeah. We've seen it both ways.
I'm sure. I mean, some of these older plants may not even have it. Well, they probably do because it's mandatory now, but
Not necessarily.
Sometimes you do find where they don't have e-stops.
Mm.
There's lots of different philosophies, and it just has to do with really what's going on. Sometimes there will be a zone. They'll have e-stop zones.
Mm.
So any e-stop button you would hit or pull cord in this zone would shut down everything.
We may shut down 4 or 5 conveyors.
Or you may have just an e-stop on a conveyor that feeds a conveyor that feeds something else. So you may emergency stop one piece of equipment, but then everything upstream of that would do a controlled stop, possibly, because that's not where the problem is. It's
Back here where you did the e-stop.
So, and it can get tricky. And you can have arguments with people about what's right and what's wrong.
That's where you need
That's where I was going to go with that.
And that's where you need a controls guy, and it all depends on how the plant operates their line. Because we just got done doing a project for one that basically each piece of equipment is its own entity, and they plug it, each one of them in all the way down. So when this one gets unplugged, everything else is still running. Even though there's an e-stop, you hit the e-stop, it just stops that conveyor. And they're just everything's on wheels basically almost. And so the line could be over here one day, the next day it's over here. So they're just more mobile and they're always changing stuff around. Whereas other places, everything's bolted to the floor and everything's tied together. It's all programmed. Every e-stop on the line will shut the whole line down. So if you push the e-stop on the discharge, it shuts down the front of the line. So it's all linked together. So it depends on the customer, how they do things.
And what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I think, maybe one more important distinction between a normal stop and an e-stop. In the case of a conveyor is just running. And if you hit the stop button, it's going to stop. And if you hit an e-stop, it's going to stop. So you say, well, what's the difference really? The thing about an e-stop is it doesn't just stop the equipment. It removes power from the equipment.
The e-stop does.
Yeah, it actually removes power from the device that is running the motor.
Okay.
A normal stop wouldn't do that. A normal stop would go through the normal stop-start circuitry and whatever's controlling the motor. An e-stop simply takes the power away from
Cuts it.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so that if there's a failure in the motor controller and you hit a stop button and it doesn't stop because there's something has failed within that controller, if you have the e-stop is designed to actually remove the power from the whole system.
It matters on the size of the conveyor and the motor you're running, or is it just?
Well, I mean, yeah, you size components to whatever the size of the load is, but in the way it functions, no, it's all the same.
Just all the same?
An e-stop really should remove power. A normal stop really doesn't need to. All it needs to do is go through its normal control sequence to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
And a lot of times this is all figured out by the electricians.
They tell you, they say this is where we want it.
They'll tell us how many e-stops it needs, or things like that. Because we're mostly just designing the conveyor and making the belt go around. And they're the ones doing the power up, right, Steve? I mean,
That's correct, and that's one of the things that makes us lucky.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it you
Because
don't have to worry about all the electrical?
Yeah, because it can get hairy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen production people arguing with controls engineers.
Yep.
Well, if I hit an e-stop here, I don't want this to stop, and somebody else will say, well, it's got to stop. No, it can't stop, because if it does, we're going to lose money and product. But you don't understand, it has to stop because of this and this and this. So, it can get like I said, it can get pretty hairy.
So where do you guys fit in the planning of this then? So obviously
Hopefully we're outside the
planning
plan.
You're
Really
like,
about-
this is the conveyor, then you let them tell you. But
Yeah, some of the things they'll do is they'll say, well, operators gonna be standing here, so we need a e-stop right here. So we'll build a bracket for it.
Okay.
We really don't do any controls design.
Hmm.
And, well, we have a little, very little, pretty simple stuff. It's just not what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So you provide the equipment, they have another team then that comes in and
Yeah.
puts on the controls.
Now we do have folks that we work with, so you know we can
Yeah.
we can coordinate that.
We do coordinate
Right.
a lot.
But we're not actually going, you know, we're not designing a conveyor and going, now let's see, we're gonna need 3 e-stops on this. No, it's usually determined by the customer, you know, or an electrician is telling us, hey, you're gonna be required to have 3 e-stops. And so then we'll build a bracket, you know, or whatever, integrate that in the design. One of the things that we would be concerned about, obviously, is if that bracket's going to be cleanable, you know, sanitary design kind of thing, you know, and even with the pull cords, like we were talking, making sure all those components are not going to hold bacteria and things like that, because it's going to.
Right.
And that's where your expertise is anyway, is in sanitary design.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, that's where trades have to kind of overlap each other. Electrician's not that great a welder usually, and so we'll weld the parts for them, and they bolt everything, all their stuff on. So sometimes it's, you know, some of them do weld, but it's rare to find a decent one who'll make it look like we do.
Yeah, if you have an electrician that's a really fine welder,
Yeah,
he's probably a
It's-
welder before he's an electrician.
exactly. It's not
Yeah.
common. We have the same problem with plumbers and welders. Sometimes the drains we put in are underground and actually a plumbing spec or plumbing trade, but plants want it welded, and so we'll have to get a plumber to make sure we're doing it right, I guess, and we weld it, and
And then they install.
well, we do the install. It's just that, you know, some trades overlap, and that's similar. Don't have to get too far off track, but
So you have to have.
we listen to the electrician on e-stops, really.
Well, they have the certificate.
Yeah.
It says, we know how to do this. Same with the plumber. So
Yeah.
you just do what they need to have done, making sure that it stays within sanitary design specifications.
Right.
I guess we had done it enough that if we weren't putting e-stops on something, Steve or I might say, hey, you need an e-stop, you know?
Yeah, I mean.
You'd cause them to
you know,
think about it anyway and say
We've been
something.
around enough to know that you need that stuff.
Yeah, so,
But a good example, this just happened. I designed a conveyor and I put a couple of e-stops on it. I sent the design back to the factory and they looked it over and they said, well, we think we'd like 2 more e-stops on this other end. And that's great, so we did that.
mhm.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, it really isn't up to us where they need to go or how many
Mhm.
necessarily, because we're really not designing that part of it.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, you don't want that liability in.
Not really.
If somebody gets hurt and they say, hey, you didn't design the e-stops in it,
Mhm.
you say, well, we do sanitary design. We build
Yeah,
them.
it's kind of outside of our trade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is good.